Story number 1, spare outlet. I was at my desk when he first asked. Thursday afternoon, late September, the kind of rain that makes the whole city feel smaller. The co-working space was half empty, like it always is around 4 o'clock. Most people had already left for the day. He was maybe 50, wearing a button-down shirt that didn't quite fit right in the shoulders, carrying a laptop and a backpack that looked heavier than it should. He glanced around the rows of desks, then looked at mine. "Hey, do you mind if I charge here for a bit? My station doesn't have any free outlets." I said yes without thinking about it. That's the thing about these spaces. Everyone's in the same situation. You help out. It's just how it works. He sat up in the empty chair next to me, the one that's usually just a place to stack papers. His backpack was open, and I caught a smell immediately. Sharp, chemical, like acetone or nail polish remover. It made my eyes water a little. I shifted my chair slightly away and tried not to be obvious about it. "Thanks," he said. "Just need to top up the battery." I nodded and went back to work. I was finishing a logo revision for a client, moving layers around in Illustrator. He sat there quietly, his laptop open, not really doing anything that I could see. Just sitting. I remember noticing that. Not typing, not scrolling, just there. He came back the next day. Same time, same request. The smell was there again. I said yes again, because saying no the second time would have felt weird. He positioned his chair a little closer this time. I noticed because my desk isn't that wide. There's maybe 3 feet between where I sit and where the empty chair is. Now it felt like 2. This happened for 5 days. Every afternoon around 4 o'clock, he'd appear, ask politely, set up next to me. Each day his chair crept incrementally closer. Not so much that I could call him out on it, but enough that I was aware of it. Enough that I started tensing up when I heard the elevator ding. The smell never changed. That sharp chemical thing. It made my sinuses burn if I breathed through my nose, so I started breathing through my mouth, which made me feel paranoid that he could hear me doing it. On the 6th day, I was working on something sensitive, a pitch deck for a new client. Nothing public yet, but detailed enough that I wouldn't want it floating around. Mock-ups, strategy, numbers. The kind of thing that matters. He reached for his charger cord, which was on my side of the desk. His phone was in his other hand. I saw it come up, and I saw the angle. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was looking at my screen. The camera app was open. I could see the shutter icon clearly. I unplugged his laptop immediately. Not aggressive, just decisive. "I need the outlet," I said. He pulled his hand back. "Oh, sure, no problem." He packed up slowly. Too slowly, like he was thinking about something. He didn't say anything else. Just left. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, not moving. Then I called the building manager. I gave him a description. Middle-aged, around 50, brown hair starting to gray, the button-down shirt, the backpack. I told him about the chemical smell and the phone. I told him I wanted to move desks. The manager said they'd look into it and set me up in one of the private conference rooms on the 4th floor for the rest of the week. The conference room was small and windowless and locked. I felt safer in it, which is its own kind of unsettling. The fact that I needed to feel safer. 3 days later, the manager called me back into his office. He had a laptop open, security footage from the main entrance. He played it for me without saying anything first. The man walked in through the front doors. He didn't go to the guest check-in desk. He went straight to the keypad by the interior entrance. The one that requires a 6-digit code. He typed something in. The door clicked open. He He walked through like he'd done it 100 times. "That's your access code," the manager said. It wasn't a question. I changed it that day. I changed my passwords. I reported it to the police, though the officer who took my statement seemed to think nothing had actually happened yet. A man took a photo of my screen. A man used a code that wasn't his, nothing stolen, nothing damaged. He suggested I keep an eye on my accounts and let them know if anything came up. I never saw him in the building again. 2 months later, I got an email. The subject line looked like it was from my biggest client, the one whose pitch deck he'd photographed. The email contained a detailed mock-up of a project proposal, a project I'd only been working on during that week, a project that had never left my screen. The mock-up was slightly wrong. Not obviously wrong, but wrong enough that I knew it wasn't from my client. The color palette was off by a few shades. One of the logos was mirrored. The copy had a typo that I would never have made. The email address was close to my client's real address. Close enough that if you weren't paying attention, you might not notice. I reported it to my client. They confirmed they hadn't sent it. They asked me what was happening. I didn't have a good answer. I changed my passwords again. I enabled 2-factor authentication on everything. I started using a VPN. I told myself it was over, that he'd gotten what he needed, whatever that was, and moved on to someone else. But I still think about that chemical smell. I still notice when someone positions themselves at an angle to my screen. I still check my access code logs, though the building manager stopped sending them to me months ago. I don't know his name. I don't know what he wanted or what he did with the information. The police never called back. My client's accounts were fine. Nothing obvious happened, but something did happen, and it's still happening in the way I move through that space now, or any space. The way I'm aware that the person next to me could be looking at my screen. The way I know that a code I thought was private might not be. The way a simple request, "Can I charge my laptop?" can become something else entirely, and you won't know it until it's too late. Story number 2, Backseat Passenger. I picked up Marcus outside the shuttered strip mall on Cobb Parkway around 11 o'clock. The fog was thick that night, the kind that makes the parking lot lights look like they're drowning. He was standing alone under the awning, wearing a dark hoodie, and when he got in the back seat, he didn't say much, just gave me an address downtown and settled into the seat. The ride was quiet. I had the radio low, some talk station I wasn't really listening to. Marcus stared out the window the whole time. I remember thinking he seemed tired, or maybe just preoccupied. People get in my car at all hours, and most of them don't want to talk. That's fine with me. About 10 minutes in, he leaned forward between the seats. "Hey, could you make a quick stop? My friend's place. I need to grab something I left there. It won't take long." I glanced at him in the mirror. His face was calm, unremarkable. He pulled out a $20 bill and held it up. "No problem," I said. "Where?" He gave me an address in a neighborhood I didn't know well, off one of the side roads. I plugged it into my GPS and turned off Cobb. The streets got narrower. The fog got thicker. Streetlights became fewer and farther apart, until they were just occasional pools of yellow in the dark. The humid air was coming through my cracked window, and there was a smell I couldn't place at first. Sharp and chemical, gasoline maybe, or something like it. I told myself it was from a car. Someone had spilled something. It's a suburb. People do things. The GPS told me to turn onto Ashford Drive. The houses here were set back from the road, most of them dark. No porch lights. No cars in driveways. It felt late in a way that went beyond the time on the clock. "It's the one on the left," Marcus said. "The dark blue house. I could barely see it. No lights on inside, no lights outside. Just a dark shape against darker trees." I pulled into the driveway and put the car in park. "I'll be quick," Marcus said. I nodded and watched him get out. He walked toward the side of the house, away from the front door. That was the first thing that didn't feel right. Why would he go around the side if he was just grabbing something from a friend? I sat there with the engine running. The fog pressed against the windshield. I could see the outline of trees across the street. Nothing else. No lights in any of the neighboring houses. No sound except the idle of my engine and the occasional car passing on a distant road. Then 2 men stepped out from the darkness beside the house. They moved with purpose, not hurrying but not casual either. One was heavy, set, wearing a dark jacket. The other was thinner, taller. They positioned themselves, one on either side of my car, blocking the driveway. They didn't approach the window. They just stood there. My hand moved to the door lock button on my armrest. Nothing happened. I pressed it again. Still nothing. Then I heard the soft click from the back seat. The child safety lock. Marcus had engaged it from inside the car before he got out. I could see him now, standing near the side of the house, watching. The 2 men moved closer. The one on my driver's side leaned down slightly, peering in through the window. I could see his face now. He wasn't angry or aggressive. He just looked patient, like he was waiting for something. My heart was doing something wrong in my chest. I was thinking too fast, my mind jumping ahead to scenarios I didn't want to imagine. This wasn't a forgotten item. This was something else entirely. I reached down and found the manual lock on my door, the little lever on the inside of the panel. I pulled it up hard. The lock disengaged with a click that felt loud in the car. The man on my left saw the movement. He straightened up. I didn't think after that. I just acted. I slammed my foot on the accelerator and wrenched the wheel hard to the right. The car lurched forward. My passenger mirror caught the edge of a pickup truck, parked at the end of the driveway, and snapped off with a crack of plastic and metal. The gap between the truck and the mailbox was tight, maybe 3 feet, and I was aiming for it. The car scraped through. I felt the impact on my right side, heard the sound of something tearing. Behind me, Marcus had lurched forward from the sudden acceleration. His hands grabbed for the back of my seat, trying to pull himself up, trying to reach the wheel. I braked hard at the corner. He hit the back of the seat and fell forward. I reached back and unlocked the rear doors, the child safety locks disengaging with a soft click. "Get out," I said. He was already moving. The door swung open, and he rolled out of the car while I was still rolling forward. I didn't look back. I drove. I took random turns through the neighborhood, watching my mirrors, my hands shaking on the wheel. No headlights followed me. After a few minutes, I was back on a main road, back in the light. I drove to a police station and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before I went inside. I told them what happened. They took a report. They said they'd look into it, but their tone suggested they wouldn't find anything. A man and a woman officer. Both professional, both skeptical. I couldn't blame them. It sounded insane out loud. 2 days later, I found Marcus's phone wedged under the passenger seat. I don't know how I missed it. It must have fallen out of his pocket when he rolled out of the car. I should have turned it in to the police. I should have left it alone. Instead, I pressed the power button. The phone unlocked with just a swipe. The home screen showed a photo gallery icon with a preview thumbnail. I opened it. The first image was my apartment building, taken from across the street during the day. The next one was my parking spot, my car clearly visible. Then my license plate, zoomed in. Then my apartment window, taken from ground level, the angle suggesting someone had been standing in the landscaping outside the building. There were more, at least 30 photos, all of my building. All taken over weeks, maybe months. The timestamps on the oldest ones went back to early September. I sat in my car in my parking lot and looked at those images of my own home, taken by someone I'd never met, and I realized that Marcus wasn't the threat. Marcus was just the bait. The two men in that driveway weren't trying to rob me or carjack me. They were trying to get me out of the car. I called the police again. They came and took the phone and said they'd investigate. That was 3 weeks ago. No one has called me back. No one has told me anything. I don't drive rideshare anymore. I work from home now, and I don't go out much. I keep my curtains closed. I check my locks twice before I sleep, and I still don't sleep well. Sometimes I think about Marcus, about whether his name was even real. I think about how long he was watching my building. I think about what would have happened if that gap between the truck and the mailbox had been just a little bit smaller. But mostly I think about the fact that I still don't know why. Story number 3, Canyon Shortcut. I was out there to count birds. That's all it was supposed to be. 4 days in a canyon system south of Moab, tracking population density across 3 elevation zones. I'd done it before. Solo work, early mornings, methodical. The kind of work that requires patience and solitude. The hiker found me on the first day around 10 in the morning. I was setting up a point, count station near a juniper stand, marking GPS coordinates on my handheld unit. He came around the ridge from the north, already sweating through his shirt, and he seemed genuinely interested when he asked what I was doing. I explained it simply. Bird surveys. I'd be covering 3 main trail corridors over 4 days, camping at night, moving between sites at dawn. He asked smart questions about sample sizes, about how I controlled for observer bias, about whether I was tracking specific species or doing a general census. The kind of questions someone asks when they're actually listening, not just making conversation. He said he was doing a multi-day loop, that he'd been planning it for months. He seemed friendly. We talked for maybe 10 minutes. He knew the area well enough to ask about water sources and shade, and I mentioned my camp spot for that night. A flat clearing about 3 miles south, near a seasonal wash. I didn't think twice about it. The next morning, I was on the second trail corridor, maybe 4 miles east of where I'd camped. This was a different watershed, different habitat zone. As I was setting up my second point count station, I saw him coming down the trail from above. He waved. Just a casual wave, like we'd run into each other at a grocery store. He said something about the heat, about how the canyon seemed to funnel it somehow. I nodded, said something back. He continued down the trail, and I watched him go, thinking it was a small world. Our routes must overlap more than I'd realized. But that thought didn't sit right. Not really. The overlap didn't make sense geographically. His loop, as he described it, shouldn't have brought him to this trail at this time. I tried to rationalize it. People change their plans. He could have decided to take a shortcut. The canyon system is interconnected. There were a dozen ways he could have ended up there. I finished my survey work and moved to my second camp, a site I'd chosen specifically because it was off-trail, tucked into a side canyon with good water access. I didn't mention it to anyone. I just went. On day 3, I was on the third trail corridor, the one that runs along the highest elevation. I was alone for most of the morning, which was normal. The heat was brutal, and most casual hikers stick to early morning or late afternoon. I was doing my counts, moving slowly, listening. I saw him around 2 in the afternoon, maybe a quarter mile away, standing on an outcropping above the trail. He wasn't hiking. He was just standing there, looking down at the canyon. When he saw me, he didn't wave this time. He just watched for a moment, then turned and walked back the way he'd come. That's when the rationalizing stopped working. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself he could be doing the same loop I was, that it was a popular area, that coincidences happen. But I also knew the terrain well enough to know that reaching that outcropping from any logical hiking route would require either a significant detour or knowledge of the area that went beyond casual tourism. I cut my survey short that day. I told myself it was the heat. I hiked back to my camp, the off-trail site, and I locked myself in my tent as soon as the sun started dropping. I had a headlamp, a knife, and my satellite communicator. I didn't sleep much. At dawn, I unzipped my tent slowly, the way you do when you're checking the weather. The light was just starting to come in from the east, and the canyon was still cool. There were footprints in the dust around my tent. Fresh ones. The kind that form when someone walks on dry earth before the dew has fully evaporated. They circled my tent in a rough pattern, and one set of prints came directly to my tent door, stopping about 2 feet away, where the person would have been able to see the tent entrance clearly. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there, listening. The canyon was quiet, no birds yet, no wind. Just my own breathing, which sounded very loud. I packed in maybe 5 minutes. I didn't take time to break down my camp properly. I just shoved everything into my pack and started hiking toward the ranger station, which was about 6 miles away, mostly downhill. I kept checking behind me. Every time the wind died down, I could hear boots on gravel, distant and irregular, like someone was following but not trying to hide it. I didn't see anyone, but I heard them. The ranger station was a small building with a radio and a lot of maps. The ranger on duty was a woman named Sarah, maybe in her 50s, and I told her what had happened. I didn't go into detail about the hiker at first. I just said I'd felt unsafe, that I'd seen someone watching me, that there were footprints around my camp. She took it seriously. She didn't dismiss it. She offered to escort me back to my vehicle. I said yes immediately. On the way out, she asked if I wanted to stop by my primary survey point, the place I'd spent the most time over the past 3 days. I said okay, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe I wanted confirmation that I wasn't crazy. Maybe I wanted proof. The survey point was near a cluster of rocks, a natural vantage where I could see across the canyon and hear birds clearly. Sarah walked over to the rocks and started looking around, the way rangers do when they're checking for trash or damage. She moved one of the larger stones, and she found a pair of binoculars, expensive ones, and a small field journal. The journal had notes about my movements, times I'd been at each location, a description of my vehicle, the make, color, and license plate. My name, written out, and the name of my university, copied from the patch on my field vest. There were sketches of the canyon trails, with X marks showing where I'd be each day. Sarah didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she radioed the sheriff's office. They found the hiker 2 days later, camping illegally about a mile from the ranger station. He had a camera with a telephoto lens, more binoculars, and detailed maps of the canyon marked with notes about my schedule. He claimed he was just interested in my research. He said he wanted to learn about bird surveys. He said the notes were just for his own reference, to understand the methodology. He said the binoculars were his, and he'd left them at the survey point by accident. No one believed him. But there wasn't much they could charge him with. He wasn't on my property. He wasn't technically trespassing. The canyon is public land. He hadn't touched me. He hadn't threatened me. They told him to leave the area. He did. I finished my survey work, but I didn't camp alone again. I drove back to town each night. I filed a report with the sheriff, and I sent an email to my department head explaining the situation. I still think about those boot prints around my tent. I still think about what would have happened if I'd slept through the night, if I hadn't woken up at dawn, if I hadn't unzipped my tent to check the weather. I still do my surveys, but I never camp alone anymore. And I never tell anyone where I'll be.